Hi, everyone. It's Sam Collins, the coding and billing expert for acupuncture in the American Acupuncture Council. We're here for you, and we want to make sure your practice continues to thrive. Let's get into it. Let's talk about what's happening with documentation of acupuncture services, specifically time services. This is continuously a problem, and I want to help you solve that and make sure you understand it with some ease to make sure your claims are paid and make sure you're getting paid what you're supposed to be paid. So let's go to the slides, everyone. Well, let's talk about documenting and recording time specifically for acupuncture. Where we've run into a ton of trouble is to realize that acupuncturists probably never really learned this correctly and don't understand the value of their time. I think acupuncturists, probably more than any other provider, spend more time with their patients one-on-one than any other provider. And I've been to lots of different types, but my acupuncturist is the one I spend the most time with. All I'm saying to you is that's true. Let's make sure to document it. So acupuncture highlights specifically time, and I underline it here. Notice each of the codes indicate initial 15 minutes of personal one-on-one contact. The additional one, each additional 15 minutes with personal one-on-one contact. So it means that acupuncture requires that you spend time one-on-one with the patient and, of course, inserting needles. Now, I just highlighted the manual acupuncture, but the same is true for electroacupuncture. Whether or not it's electro or manual, please document the time. It's the one area that so frustrates me because I have so many good acupuncturists who are doing really well and getting paid hundreds of dollars per visit on some insurances. I kid you not. But we run into problems where their claims are denied. And I want you to see what's occurring. Here's one for United Healthcare, and you'll see here, this is for 97811 and 13, and it says not supported. It says the add-on type of code requires a primary code and cannot be accurately seen. Therefore, the validity of the accuracy of the billed service cannot be verified. So in other words, there's no time. You think, well, no, it doesn't say that. Well, let's see. 97813, the initial one says, the submitted medical records do not support 97813 was performed. The documentation submitted does not indicate the time was personal one-on-one contact. Now notice it's telling you the time didn't indicate as personal one-on-one. It is not sufficient to just say time, because time could be the time the patient is resting on needles. We want to know the one-on-one time. Now, here's an interesting one. Notice some of the claims, and initially for the follow-up set says not supported, but notice the initial set is. So what did they do differently on the first they didn't do on the second? You've got to get in the habit of saying, I spent one-on-one time. So by example, what is this one-on-one time? And I think many acupuncturists forget what this really includes. So let's get into this 15-minute code. The 15-minute code is personal one-on-one contact. Literally, that means on an acupuncture visit day, not with exam, just treatment, as soon as you walk in the room with a patient, the time starts. So what I'd like you to do is look at your watch and go, oh, started at 10:05 or whatever the case may be. Give me specifically the start time, or at least start a timer, because this means, and you'll see here, the acupuncturist is in the room with the patient and actively performing a medically necessary component of acupuncture. Now realize, what is that going to include? You know, when you first walk in the room, you might review their note and say, hey, last time you said such and such, that's included. It's going to be review of the history, asking them how they're feeling. Notice none of this is even yet putting needles anywhere, but just asking the patient what's going on. It's then going to include your day-to-day evaluation. Could be tongue and pulse, range of motion, you name it, any of those things you might do. Realize includes washing your hands, sanitizing, choosing the points, cleaning the points, getting the needles open, inserting the needles, manipulating the needles if you have to. And of course, it actually includes removal. So you know how you're in the room with a patient, you might leave them rest on needles? Maybe you come back 10 minutes later, as soon as you walk in the room, time starts again, because the time to take the needles out and dispose actually counts. And notice this component, as well as completion of chart notes while the patient is present. So that means, you finish it up when the patient's there, that actually counts. Now, what wouldn't count is if you do it later sitting in your office, but if it's while the patient is there, it all counts. So you're asking those few questions at the end, just give me the total time. I'd love that we'd have a program somehow, maybe there's a mat. When you walk in the room, the mat turns on a timer. And when you walk out of the room, the timer goes off, because if you're in the room, it's a component of acupuncture. You're doing something towards it, unless it's another therapy. Now, where a lot of people get fooled on this, though, they say, well, Sam, it says 15 minutes. Do I actually have to spend 15 minutes? Technically, no. It's what we call the 8-minute rule. And this 8-minute rule is true for all codes that are 15 minutes when it comes to CPT, including physical therapy and physical medicine, but actually acupuncture. So I've given you a simple breakdown of it. Notice 1 unit is at least 8 minutes. So do you have to spend 15 minutes to do acupuncture? No. If I spend 8 minutes and insert a needle and I can remove it and they're out of there, that actually could be enough time. Now, I don't think anyone's doing an 8-minute visit, but I think you get the premise here is that we're just looking in increments, that if you're doing more than 50% of the time, meaning 8 minutes, you qualify. I don't think anyone has any problem doing the first 8 minutes, of course. Where things get a little trickier, though, is how do we do an additional set? Well, that requires additional time and additional insertions, but it doesn't require 15 minutes. The answer is no. It requires an additional 8. Now, here's where it's confusing, though. What if I do 8 minutes on the first and go, I did 8 minutes on the second? Well, what's the total time for 8 plus 8? 16. Is that enough? No, because there has to be at least 23. So realize the second unit of time, that 8 minutes, begins after 15 minutes and it's plus 8. So that's why you'll see 1 unit is as little as 8, but 2 units or 2 sets is 23. 3 sets would be 38. So you have to make sure that that time matches. So by example, if you did 8 minutes on one and 8 minutes on the other, that wouldn't be enough. It would have to be 15 plus 8. Or how about this? What if you spent 12 minutes on the first one and 11 minutes on the second one? Would that be adequate? It would, because there's 23 minutes. So please make sure that you're just simply documenting the time. Notice it wasn't saying the time wasn't documented. They were indicating the time wasn't clearly indicated as face-to-face. So get in the habit of saying face-to-face time with the patient. Because what if there's time where the patient's resting on needles? I know when I go to my acupuncturist, she will put in needles, then she usually leaves the room about 10 minutes or so. Great. It gives me time to relax. Realize, though, that time simply doesn't count towards the coding, but then when she comes back, it does. So it has to be actively part of it. So if you come back in the room and stimulate needles, it would be. If you come back in and insert more, that would be an additional set. So please note here, it says, yes, do you have to do insertion of needles to count? Yeah, reinsertion, bad term, of course, but additional insertion. So keep in mind, just retaining needles for an extended period of time does not give 2 sets. Stimulating needles does not. There must be an insertion. So keep that in mind and realize I'm showing this is from Regis Blue Cross Blue Shield from their acupuncture part. Notice it says here 8-minute rule, 8 to 22, 23 to 37. So you can see clearly this is not just a SAM rule. I'm not trying to just say I'm the know-it-all. No, I'm giving you the rule based on the guidelines. Notice it says if you do 7 minutes or less, it doesn't count. But as soon as you do 8 minutes, yep. So right in there, you can do it. So realize that United Healthcare is the one I just showed you that it had a problem. And it says, for any time-based code, the duration of service must be clearly documented. And the time service is not clearly and properly documented, then the service is not supported. And it needs to be because we have to indicate face-to-face time. Acupuncture, often patients will rest on needles. And so the reason that we're seeing some of this is because I think we're combining that and not separating it out, or just not making it clear. Just make it clear. Notice a couple of things here because it tells you how you document. So you might wonder, how do I supposed to document this, Sam? Well, it's unacceptable documentation of time-based services. What's unacceptable? Documenting in terms of units. You can't just say I did 2 sets of acupuncture. You can say that, but I need you to tell me set number 1, how many minutes did you spend face-to-face and where'd you put needles? We cannot use a range of time. You can't say I spent between 20 and 25. It should be I spent 20 or 21 or 22. You also want to make sure that you're not specifying a measurement or increment used, meaning that I did from this time to this time, that range part, or just not mentioning time at all. I think the easiest way to see this, though, and for those of you that have been to a seminar with me and or have our AcuCode, you've seen this. This is a sample of a SOAP note. What I want to do is just blow up where the area is that time is documented. Take a look here where it talks about acupuncture, and it says set 1, 2, and 3. Now realize this form, if you wanted to add a 4th set, you just add another column. But nonetheless, notice set 1. The points that were inserted or reinserted, could be either one, we list the points. And then we indicate face-to-face time, 5:20 to 5:45. That's 25 minutes. Notice there's retention time. There is a rest period. But notice set number 1 is 25. Notice set number 2, 5:55 to 6:05. That's only 10 minutes. But does that meet the 8-minute rule? Yeah, it's more than 8. Plus the first one being 25, that's 33. We're easily above. And then notice the third set is 6:10 to 6:30. Now, I mean, wonder how come the middle set was so much shorter? Well, it doesn't take that much time to add more, probably. And the last set was also 20 minutes. Why was that last set longer? Think of all the things you do at the end of the visit: counseling the patient, removing the needles, and disposing. Just give me the time. None of that is hard. Acupuncturists, by right, always brag about how much time they spend with someone. I talked to someone this morning that goes, Sam, I spend, God, between 40 and 50 minutes with every patient. And I believe that to be pretty true for most of you. You know what I want from you? Document it. You'll never have an issue. Now you may think, well, I only do cash. Great. You still have to document the services. So realize this has nothing to do with insurance. This is just to do with you properly documenting what services were provided. Tell me how much time you spent, what points you did. We're good. It will also equal you get paid. I'm not sure you noticed, and I'm not going to go back to it. Did you see the prices on some of that United Healthcare? So if you want to rewatch this later, you're going to go, oh my gosh. Now, I'm not saying we want to bill that much, but if you're in certain areas, why wouldn't you bill what it's actually worth? Acupuncture is a great service. You're at a great time to be an acupuncturist. Take advantage of the advancements of your field in getting access, but please document the time. It'll never be an issue. I want to say thanks, but realize we're here to help. Our network service and our seminars are where you can go for one-on-one help. We can do Zooms together and deal with you specifically, not just a general question. Please go out and do well because we're dependent on you. The American Acupuncture Council and myself, we count on you. Your success is ours. Until next time, my friends.